Hi, everyone. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to Perfect Prey. And thank you so much for following and subscribing and liking. And wherever you see me, I really appreciate it. I truly believe that protective parents have so much influence and that we have more power than we could ever imagine, even against this awful oppressor. I mean, this very harmful oppressor. So please like, subscribe, Perfect Prey. Please pass along the information to other people. I think oftentimes what happens is we don't even realize we're in an abusive relationship and the abuse has already been occurring and the abuser is harming our children. And so you've heard me say this before, but I believe all abuse starts day one. Literally, the moment you're holding that baby in your arms, the abuser knows immediately how much that child means to you, knows that your love is implicit, and frankly, is threatened by it. Frankly, that ignites in them their shame because they realize they cannot love that baby in any way that you can. And they don't hold love in their hearts the same way that you do. They don't. They're not capable of it. And they know that at their core. So what do? They immediately feel triggered by that and overwhelmed and flooded. And we can talk about their trauma. But listen, abuse is a choice. And so what ends up happening is maybe they behave in a way that they aren't at all threatened by the baby. They just love that baby and then become like this hero parent. Maybe they resent the baby. They're jealous of the baby. They feel like the baby takes too much of your time. And maybe they're just typical, engaged, but not so engaged. But here's the problem. As time goes on and you, the adult victim, the protective parent, begins to gain clarity, you begin to gain that clarity in these circumstances, you might begin to disengage a little bit. You might not show your affection in the same way. You might actually perhaps express anger, frustration. Maybe they've cheated on you. Maybe they've not been available to help with household items. Maybe they've forgotten important dates. And you begin to have this space where there's some warning signs going off, but you're not quite sure what it is. And then what you do is you're not showing the same love and affection that you had. Now, maybe during good times when they approach you and they seek you out and they're really loving, you might actually reciprocate. But overall, they are starting to see a change in you. And in that change, they recognize that if you see who they are, that will ignite that shame again for them. And what they have to do is cover that up. They have to hide that. And so what they're going to do is insidiously and in a nuanced way that you would not even notice oftentimes, they're going to diminish you with that child because, again, that child they realize matters more to you than anything in the world. Anything in the world. And so, what can you do? You've got to take that 10,000-foot view. You know, I did a podcast on that. You've got to take the 10,000-foot view. If you are having these warning signs, you need to take the time to pull yourself out and look at the dynamics that are going on in your family system. Be aware of how that abuser is diminishing you. Be aware of your own experiences in that relationship dynamic. Do not justify, argue, defend, and explain. Do not empower or embolden the abuser, and do not do that with your children. Regardless of how they are treating you, that whole jading process, justifying, arguing, defending, and explaining, emboldens the coercion and control in the adult perpetrator and also emboldens it in our children who are being taught to behave a certain way with that abuser. That abuser is teaching them, is giving them the parameters that if they do this, they'll get this. Every child wants to be loved by their parent. They're going to behave a certain way just to get what they think is love, what they believe at their core could possibly be affection from that abusive parent. sometimes the kids have a recognition. They recognize that that love is unconditional, that it is not actually real. But then they have to align because that feels safest. Again, if you're in the den with a wolf, what are you going to do? That feels safest to them. And so, what I need you to do, and I ask you, if you have younger children, this is so important. If you have a friend who has younger children and you're listening to this, please share this. The younger we start with them, the more clarity we have at their younger ages, whether we stay or try to escape that relationship, we can actually fortify their attachment with us, counteract the malicious fracturing of attachment as much as possible. It's when we don't see it, it's when we don't look through the coercive control lens that the abuser gains that much more traction, a lot of traction beforehand that puts us in harm's way, but more importantly, or most significantly, puts our children in harm's way. So, when you see what's occurring, you hear the false narrative, you know there's something going on, and maybe you've never heard it. I never heard it. I didn't know what was going on. So, what can you do? Ask yourself, that person is an abuser. What are they saying about me? How are they trying to hurt me? How are they trying to compromise my relationship with my children? What are they doing to gain more power and control over me? And it's really not hard to figure out because whatever words are coming out of your children's mouth, why do you spend so much money? How come you don't work? How come you work so many hours? Did you take your medication? You can think about it, right? You're such an awful dancer. Oh, you don't know anything about music. You can't sing, right? And so we know what's being said. We just don't even, we actually aren't recognizing it because we're living in that fog. Pull yourself out, get the 10,000 foot view, look down and ask yourself, what are my children hearing about me? What are they hearing? And then from there, counteract the narrative, not from a place of, how dare you say that to me? Or that's disrespectful. No jading, no justifying. Mom's always working hard, right? Just a very clear, sweetheart, that's not true, right? Or I'm sorry, sounds like you heard something that's not true. What can we do? We can create a different narrative that comes from a position of personal power, and derailing that abuser's narrative. That's what we have to do. This is a really short podcast. Thought I'd do it really quickly. Wanted to be sure that I put it out there. What can you do? Recognize it, become aware of what's being said about you, and be on the offense rather than the defense. So imperative. Offensive playing is going to get you the win at the end of the day. Have a great day, everyone.